Welcome to 2 Cents We See Scary Movies, the podcast where we find horror in the strangest corners, from VHS rentals to cats who refuse to give up the good chair. I'm Talon, the one who would walk straight into a murder party because, honestly, I'd rather deal with axe-wielding art students than small talk at a real one. And I'm here with Dan, who thinks the scariest part of any horror movie isn't the blood or the bodies. It's the fact that there are people in it. Because, ew, people. This week, we're talking about Murder Party, a film that proves Halloween is the perfect night to get killed, ignored, or mistaken for performance art. So grab your candy corn, maybe a pink panty dropper, and let's dive in. So the movie opens with this really long credit scene, and while the names are rolling, you're just kind of drifting through Halloween suburbia. It's early evening, the sun's going down, kids are running around in costumes with their parents, porches are decked out with pumpkins and decorations. One kid runs up to a pumpkin sitting on a stoop, picks it up, and just smashes it. Kids shit. So during all of this, we also get this shot of a guy. You don't see him at first, you just see what he's doing. He's picking out 3 horror movies, VHS tapes, at a video rental store, which made me wonder, is this movie set in the 80s? Later on, I think maybe it's early 90s.
I think it's like later 90s, early 2000s, just because of the cell phone that they were using.
Yeah, when they popped out the cell phones, I was like, shit, this can't be 80s.
Yeah, no, I think it was like late 90s, early 2000s, because that looks like the type of phone that they were using. Because it was like one of those older flip phones, not quite a razor, but around that time frame.
Yeah, well, some of them were using flip phones,
Flip phones.
except for Bill. He had his phone turned sideways
Right.
and was playing. I think they just probably, I don't know what the budget was for this movie, but maybe they were just like, I don't give a shit, just use whatever phone you have.
There was no budget to the movie. They couldn't get a lot of people to participate, and they couldn't get financial backers. So it's completely done independently, and the actors are also the crew.
Wow, they did a fantastic job.
So they paid everything out of pocket, and they did everything completely by themselves with no studio backing.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So, well, maybe this guy was just super nostalgic and still into VHS. But then again, are there
maybe.
still video rental stores at that time? If it were in the 90s, late 90s, early
Yeah,
2000s?
yeah. Blockbuster hasn't gone under yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It seemed very 80s, but it had to be by the flip phones and stuff somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s. So then we're back out on the streets with all the trick-or-treating chaos, and the camera zooms in on this black envelope just skimming along the sidewalk, and the wind is pushing it, and I gotta say, it actually takes a corner really well. Like, it turned that corner on that sidewalk perfectly. It was
Like almost
impressive.
as if it was supernatural.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive envelope choreography.
Well, it was
So,
trained.
yeah, I looked at the second time I watched it, I looked to see if maybe there was a string attached to it somehow, but if it was, they took it out and did a really good job of getting rid of it, but they did a really good job
Right.
of, with no fucking money, they did a really good job training this envelope. So so then suddenly we see someone's footsteps down on it, and the bag of movie drops, and yep, it's that same guy, which I figured because it was very distinct, that little bit with a VHS store. So I was like, this guy has to be somebody that's in the movie.
Right.
He picks up the envelope, and right then his watch beeps. He casually pulls out some pills from his jacket pocket and takes one. No idea if that's going to matter later, but the movie made it a point of showing it, so I figured I should too. Anyway, this guy looks like he's maybe in his early to mid 30s, somewhere in there. The envelope itself is really ornate. It's black with this interesting squiggle, like it has that, I don't know how you describe that look, but it has a look. It also has like this red wax style seal on the front. He opens it up and it reads, "You are invited to a murder party." It gives an address. I think it was 110 or maybe 210 Shore Street. It says, "Come alone." He stares at it, looks up and around like he's half expecting someone to be watching him, or maybe it's someone else's. So then when the guy gets home and of course realizes that that pumpkin that kid smashed was his, which I kind of figured anyway.
God damn
And
it.
yeah. He goes into his little apartment, and there are a few details here that still really kind of made me think it was the 80s. Like, he had that keychain, and on the keychain, he had one of those old oval-shaped coin pouches. You remember those? The rubbery ones, and you squeeze it, and that slit in the middle would open up, and you'd put your coins inside it. Do you remember those?
Yes.
Okay. So that made me think, okay, this is the 80s. Then there's the TV, and he had one of those big boxy old tube style TVs. It had an antenna plus a VCR. It definitely seemed old school. So again, either he just didn't really have a lot of money to upgrade his shit, or he was nostalgic for the 80s, but it had a very 80s vibe to it, early 90s. So he stops in the kitchen and dumps 2 whole bags of candy corn into a bowl, then heads to the living room to put on a movie. Out of the 3 movies that he has, I did happen to notice that he chose Scare Wolf. And for the record, the other 2 titles were Zombie versus Unicorn's Horn and Xanthocroid,
Yep.
Xanthachroid. But anyway, he settles on Scarewolf. Before he sits down, he grabs his candy corn and looks over at his chair where his cat Sir Lancelot has made himself comfortable. He politely asks, Sir Lancelot, could you please get down? And they just stare at each other for what feels like forever. The cat does
Yes.
not budge.
Like a typical cat.
Right. Finally, he just gives up and Sir Lancelot wins. So instead, he sits down at his very old computer. He gives up watching TV altogether. He sits down at a very old computer, but this is where I've started feeling like, well, maybe it is the 90s because he pulls up, even though it's an ancient looking computer, he does pull up a MapQuest style mapping thing, GPS thing on his computer. So that had to be
Well, MapQuest was a thing back then.
in the 80s?
Well, no, not the '80s. I'm talking
Yeah.
like if we're placing it like in the '90s,
Right.
2000s,
Yeah,
MapQuest
that's what
was
I'm
a thing.
saying. When he pulled up MapQuest, I was like, "Oh, well, this has gotta be the '90s then," because well, it was Map Search or something like that, but very similar type of thing. I was like, "Well, this has gotta be at least the '90s then."
Is that the mystery of the movie is trying to figure out what
Yes.
what time frame it was in?
I was very all into it right at the beginning of this movie, like, "What year is this?" So he's using Map Search to look up the address on the invitation. After that, he goes outside, scoops up the pieces of his smashed pumpkin, and apparently decides to bake with it. We later see him pull a pumpkin raisin loaf out of the oven, so that's where that went. Then he digs into some boxes labeled Halloween and pulls out a giant troll mask, but just tosses it away because what he really wants are the boxes. He decides that he's going to use these boxes to put together this DIY knight costume, which made sense because his cat's name's Sir Lancelot, and now he's dressing up like some cardboard duct tape version of a knight from that same era. And
See, it kinda reminded me of the Black Knight from Monty Python.
yeah. When I was just trying to tell you which movie this was, I was like, the guy on the front looks like he's from Monty Python because he had that look. So he must be into this whole time frame because he's got a cat named Sir Lancelot and he wants to dress like a knight. So
Right.
he's way back decades for the 80s and or 90s. So once his pumpkin loaf is finished, he wraps it in plastic, says goodbye and happy Halloween to Sir Lancelot, grabs his candy corn, his keys, and the printed map search directions, and heads off to this mysterious party. So he leaves his apartment, sets the bowl of candy corn on the stoop with a little handwritten note that says, please help yourself. And I was like, yeah, good luck with that. You'll be lucky if you get your
Yeah.
bowl back.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, "Oh, just take one." Yeah,
Right.
bullshit. If you're not there,
Could you imagine taking one candy corn?
I mean,
I know, but that would be funny.
I would tell my kids to only take one, but I'd be there, like, loading my bag.
Right. Although it is weird to just set out a whole bowl of just individual candy corns, not bagged up like, 10 or 15 pieces to a bag. Just
Right.
everybody's reaching in and grabbing candy corn.
Although
There's
this
like
is pre-COVID, so we had nothing to worry about.
yeah. Yeah, if this is back in the '90s, nobody still cared about most shit anyway. So, they were still, like, eating dirt.
Right.
Okay, so then he heads off to the party. Next scene, he's on the subway. The camera's just locked on his face, and he looks absolutely terrified. His eyes are huge, like he's wondering what on earth has he just signed himself up for. Off screen, you can hear someone talking, almost like rapping, and then the shot widens, and yep, there's a guy sitting next to him, staring right at him, just full on rapping at him. So our guy just sits there wide eyed, like he doesn't know what to do, and he's very uncomfortable looking. He finally gets off the subway, comes up the steps, and now he's in this bustling city. I wasn't sure what it was at the time, but then later on, they do talk about where they are because he mentions where he works, and they are in New York
Yeah.
City.
Yes.
And it's, of course, he gets off the subway and it's chaos. There's people everywhere. It's very busy. Music's blasting. Everybody's dressed in costumes. There's a lot of, high energy going on. He starts weaving through the crowd and eventually makes his way out of the city and into a quieter suburban neighborhood. At first, when he hits the neighborhood streets, he actually looks excited, like, okay, this might be fun. But the further he walks, the emptier it gets. Street lights are still on and everything, but there's no one around. It's completely dead, like a ghost town. And you can see the shift in his face. He keeps glancing at his map, double checking like he's not like, am I going the right way? Then suddenly he just takes off running for whatever
Right.
reason. And then for a
And
second,
when you start feeling that way, of course you're gonna continue on,
yeah, you're
right?
gonna keep running in the direction you're not sure you're supposed to be going in. Let's get
Right.
further lost. So for a second there, I thought maybe someone was chasing him though, but no, he was just
Yeah, just
running
a random
in
run.
panic silence almost because he looked a little panicked.
It's like when an animal gets the zoomies at night.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
random.
just running. Finally, he makes it to a street sign that says Shore Street. He stops, looks relieved, but also completely exhausted. That walk was a journey. Instead of the bustling city, now he's surrounded by warehouses and empty buildings. It feels totally deserted, like he left the world behind and stepped into nothingness. I mean, it is really just quiet and dead out here on these streets. So Chris, though we don't actually know his name yet, we do find it out later. So I'm just going to go ahead and use it. He shows up at the address, and sure enough, it's a warehouse. He double checks the number, makes sure he's in the right place, and then pushes the door open. He calls out hello, but nobody answers. He walks down this long corridor that's kind of lined with boxes and random metal junk, and the overhead fluorescent lights are flickering, very horror cliche. Somewhere in the distance, loud music is blasting, so he, of course, naturally follows the sound. He finally reaches a doorway and he peeks in. There are several people inside, but nobody's really interacting with each other or him. One guy is in regular clothes, like a hoodie and jean jacket, but he's got a werewolf mask pushed up on his head. He's smoking a cigarette and throwing some darts at a dartboard. The second he notices Chris, his eyes open really wide. He's like, oh crap. And he yanks the cigarette out of his mouth and pulls the mask down and pretends like nothing happened. Like, oh, you
Right, like,
can't
"Oh,
see
you
me.
can't see me."
Right. Then the camera pans around the room. There's a guy dressed kind of like some colonial era horseman. At the time, this is what I thought he was. And so for a while, I'm going to be
Right.
calling him the colonial horseman. And he's carving a pumpkin. A girl in a zombie cheerleader outfit is sitting there with earbuds in, scrolling through her iPod. So that again made me figure early 2000 vibes, I guess. But she's obviously the one in charge of the music. Next, there's a guy dressed like an old-timey baseball player, kind of at like a Field of Dreams look to him.
It was a character from The Warriors,
I don't know what
the
that
movie The
is.
Warriors.
I haven't seen it.
"Come out to play."
I have not seen that movie.
God, you're unintelligent.
I'll have to check that one out. You'll have to text that to me so I can remember to look at it, to look it up. But his face was painted with that strange muted yellow with the blacks around his mouth and one eye, I think. But so he's somebody, a baseball player from the Warriors. Okay.
And before we get to this one, there's also a young girl there that's dressed like somebody from the Road Warriors.
Right. Yeah. The Lexi is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So then the camera shifts again, and you see a girl sitting on the floor in front of a table with dominoes all set up. Except alongside the dominoes, she's also got three neat little lines of coke laid out. She snorts one, throws her head back, and when she spots Chris standing in the doorway, she laughs, like really loud. And then she's like super excited. This makes the zombie cheerleader suddenly look up from her iPod, like, oh, wait, who's this guy? Somebody's here? Somebody actually came here? And then she immediately cuts off the music. And that girl that was on the floor is the one you were talking about. At that point, everyone finally notices him. They all start getting up and moving toward him. Chris, still standing there awkwardly, goes, hi, I think I made a mistake. The girl who was doing coke and the werewolf mask guy walk over, and this is when he finally introduces himself. And he's like, hi, I'm Chris. He's still holding the invitation in his hand, and the werewolf guy snatches it from him. He looks it over and goes, no, you didn't make a mistake. Then the colonial horseman guy steps in, takes the envelope, and says, you're not in the wrong place. You're just a little early. Chris, trying to play it cool, is like, oh, okay, sorry. But as he glances around the room, his eyes land on the chainsaw, the sledgehammer, the axe, rolls of duct tape, a plastic sheeting everywhere, a chair with a rope on it. You can tell he's just realized that maybe something a little weird might be going down. What kind of party is this?
Well, those aren't typical party favors.
I thought they were. I have them at every party. I don't care what the
So I
party's
was gonna
for.
say, I mean, if that's the case, I've been going to the wrong parties.
I have them at birthday parties, Christmas parties, baby showers.
Bar mitzvahs,
Yeah, any party, doesn't matter.
any
So,
celebration.
yeah, this is how you celebrate. So Coke Girl slams the door shut behind Chris and he awkwardly pulls out the pumpkin bread, like, hey, I made some pumpkin bread. The zombie cheerleader actually takes it and says, oh, thanks. That's really sweet. Meanwhile, we see Werewolf Guy in the background and there's this close up of his hand slowly reaching for an axe. Then the Colonial Horseman dude takes the invitation and lights it on fire and then starts waving it back and forth in front of Chris like some half baked magician or wannabe hypnotist or
Yeah,
something.
that's what I felt too.
For a second, it looks like zombie cheerleader is shaking her head no. It looked like like she was shaking her head no. I thought maybe it was like to the werewolf guy because she would occasionally like you'd
Yeah.
see her, her eyes would get big, she'd shake her head. Maybe it was a twitch. I don't know. Looks suspicious. So as the flaming envelope waves around, we keep getting these glimpses of werewolf guy sneaking up behind Chris, raising the axe higher and higher. Just when the envelope burns down to nothing and Colonial Dude drops it on the floor, Chris glances down at it. At that exact moment, Werewolf Guy swings the axe. The axe gets caught in this dangling chain attached to a light, which turns the light on. Instead of splitting Chris in half, he just yanks the light on. Chris, already looking down, sees the shadow of the axe over him, spins around, and then chaos breaks loose. So Werewolf Guy yells, fucking get him! And suddenly it's a dog pile. Chris takes off for the door. The werewolf, Colonial Horseman, and Coke Girl all rush him as Chris tries to bolt out. They drag him back in and they're yelling. I have the subtitles on, and the subtitles for this movie were shit, by the way. Did you have subtitles on?
Not on this one, no. I only
Uh,
have subtitles on when I'm actually
okay. So the subtitles half the time were not correct. So I don't know if this is right because at one point the subtitles said that the cheerleader girl said, how did you find us? And I'm like, what?
right.
You had an envelope with an invitation. Like, what do you mean? How did he find you? It had the address. You guys sent this out. After a messy scuffle, they finally pin him down. The camera goes low, looking up from the floor, like you're looking from Chris's point of view at Werewolf Guy. And he leans in and says, welcome to your murder, before slamming something down hard on him. I thought he got him with the axe, but he did not. So you cut to a close up of a camera being turned on. We hear the group talking. A werewolf guy is grumbling. I don't know where that fucking light chain came from. And then he looks at one of the girls and says, but you were super sexy screaming like that. She just shrugs like, yeah, I know. Then she adds, that
Right.
cardboard outfit really freaked me out. I think he might be retarded.
I personally liked the cardboard costume. He did a good job with it.
He did. In the short amount of time that he did it in, he did it quick and he did a pretty good job.
He did.
Meanwhile, zombie cheerleader is munching on the pumpkin bread and actually making a face like, huh, this is pretty good. Coke Girl is scrolling on her phone, which tells us this is where I'm like, again, still obsessed. It has to be like the early 2000s, not the 80s. This is the big
So
mystery.
far we've gone from the 80s to the 90s to the early 2000s.
Right.
The movie is set somewhere within those decades.
Right, right. Colonial Horseman guy, he now may be a vampire because he has vampire teeth. This is where I'm like, oh, maybe he's not a horseman at all. I couldn't tell. He's setting up a camera to take pictures. He warns her, Lexi, I don't think it's smart to be on your cell phone in the middle of a crime. So now we know her name is Lexi. And she fires back, well, I don't think it's smart to take pictures either, basically. So the zombie cheerleader, whose name we learn is Sky, suggests they ditch all this and go to Cicero's party instead. But Werewolf Guy shuts that down immediately. He's like, this is the party. And besides, Cicero's an asshole. Then Cokehead girl Lexi gets off the phone and says, what the fuck is going on? Alexander is on his way. That name clearly matters to them because everyone suddenly seems nervous. Sky's like, look, I don't think any of us really thought someone was dumb enough to actually show up to this. And
Right.
she's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's just some random friggin' piece of paper,
Right.
strategically flying around the city, and here comes some random guy.
Okay, so Werewolf Guy even doubles down like, hey, the invitation literally said murder party. If some jackass shows up, then he deserves to die. Lexi chimes in, he's a white male. He's perfect. And then she looks at him. He's like, are you a Republican? And then Colonial Horseman, who we now learn is named Paul, snaps at her. Don't make this political. This is about art. To which she replies, there's nothing more political than art. So then this all made me think, oh my God, maybe it's right now. Maybe it's 2025. Oh, actually, they didn't
Right.
make this movie in 2025. So the 2020s. But anyway, so he says there's nothing more political than art. So clearly, we're not just dealing with psychos, we're dealing with pretentious psychos. Then Sky says, "This is about impressing Alexander, and you know that, Paul." And Paul fires back, "Oh, fuck you, Sky. This is about getting a grant." Now we see the real motive. They're artists trying to kill this guy as some kind of art project, hoping to score money and credibility, I guess. At this point, Chris is tied to a chair with some rope, just awkwardly sitting there like, what the hell is happening? Sky tries to steer the group back by suggesting they vote on whether to keep going or just bail and hit Cicero's party. She turns to Bill, the baseball player guy, who I had completely forgot about. I forgot he was even in the room until now
Yeah,
because
because
he,
he's pretty quiet and he was just playing on his phone.
right. So he just looks up and says, "I didn't sign up for a second degree assault party."
Right.
Which is fair. I thought that was kind of funny. So Sky, still eating Chris's pumpkin bread, suddenly pitches an idea. She's like, "Okay, I've got a way we can make both sides happy. It'll be violent enough to count, but nobody has to die. And we'll still rule the scene when it's done." Just as she's laying this out, she makes a face, pulls something out of her mouth, and goes, Are there raisins in this?" Chris nods yes. She's like, "Are they organic?" He shakes his head no. And then she freaks out. "Oh my God, I'm allergic." I was like, apparently she's only allergic to non-organic raisins. Like,
Right.
and it's like, "What?" Like, it's still a raisin.
Just a very random thing.
At the time, she hadn't explained anything yet, and I was like, "What?" So, anyway, she starts saying she'll be fine. It's the preservatives that she's allergic to. I was like, "Okay." Just makes her dizzy. So someone suggests calling 911. Chris is nodding like, "Yes, yes, yes, please call 911."
Right, yeah,
'Cause he
because he
figures
definitely wants 911.
yeah, two birds with one stone, right? But she insists that she doesn't need help. Werewolf guy drags over some boxes for her to sit on. She sits down, but immediately falls over and smacks her head on a metal pipe or something that's sticking out. She pops back up, laughing it off. "Oops, I'm fine." But there's blood trickling down the side of her face. Then she says, "It smells like cut grass." She turns her head and there's this huge gash wide open on the side of her skull. Everyone freezes, staring at her in shock, especially Chris. There's this beat of silence. She looks around and goes, "What?" And then collapses face first on the floor. We're all going to presume she's dead at this point.
Chris is just, like, looking around, like, he's not squirming, he's not trying to fight, he's just, like, looking around at all the
Yeah.
stuff that's going on.
Right, yeah. He does his facial expressions are he does a pretty good job considering you can only basically see his eyes in
Right.
most of this part, and he does look a little confused. He of course, he's probably scared, but he's also looking confused, like, "What's up with these people?" Because 'Cause they're so weird and flaky and
Right.
self-absorbed and quirky, and they get into all these weird conversations throughout the movie, and he's just like, "What the fuck is going on?" But he
Right.
does it really well with his eyes. So, Lexi says, "Sky just died."
Right,
Just
and
plain,
yeah, like, no one's upset about it, just like, "Oh, she died."
like, "Oh, bummer."
I mean, that's faster than regular movie,
Right.
grieving, because
Yes.
usually it's like, "Oh my god, they died," and then it's like, next scene, everybody's, like, having a grand time and party, and,
Right.
their friend
Yeah.
just died, but everything's great.
Yeah.
This
They just
one was like, there was no time whatsoever. It's like, "Oh, she's dead. Okay, let's go do this now."
skipped all the bullshit. They're like, "Yeah, we'll just
Right.
go to we don't care." So you can hear Chris breathing really hard, like he's starting to get on full on panic mode now that she's dead. Everyone freezes again for a second. Then Werewolf Guy goes, "Shit." And then Colonial Horseman points at Chris and accuses him, "You killed her." Chris is
Right.
babbling. Chris tied up in the chair. Chris is trying to talk. He's got a gag in his mouth. So he's like, freaking out. Werewolf Guy totally loses it. He grabs a chunk of the smashed pumpkin bread off the floor and tries to shove it into Chris's mouth while yelling, "I'm going to kill this motherfucker now." And he's yelling, "It was you, it's your bread." He's like, "Everybody lock it down." So then he's still yelling, "Your bread." When he's yelling, "Your bread," the subtitles have it spelled out YOU apostrophe RE.
You are bread.
That made me laugh. I had to rewind it too, just to make sure I read it right. But yeah, instead of just YOUR, "You are bread."
It's Facebook, grammar.
Right. Then things start to escalate. Werewolf Guy finds a big jug, something they'd earlier called acid. He starts pouring it all over Chris while screaming. Chris is pleading, "No, don't kill me." You can kind of make out what he's saying. "I don't know what happened." And then suddenly Werewolf Guy stops. He looks stunned, like he realizes what he's just done, backs up, and then literally falls over and he's yelling, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I don't know why I did that." Then we cut to
Yeah.
Lexi. Yeah. It was such a weird change.
Yeah, it was such a it really was, 'cause, I mean, like, all the screaming he was doing, and then also, "Oh my god, I am so sorry."
Yeah.
What?
It literally was a dead stop and then right into, oh my God, total repentance. So then we cut to Lexi and Paul behind cameras. Paul is behind a regular photo taking camera, and then Lexi's behind him further with a camcorder. And they're both set up on tripods and because, they're all fancy and shit with their art. They're behind there, but Lexi's like, what's going on? Because nothing's happening to Chris, who's had this acid poured all over him, but he's like screaming and screaming. Lexi and Paul go up to Chris and she sniffs him and says he smells like vinegar. Paul checks the bottle and it's labeled acetic acid, which smells like vinegar. Lexi decides to look it up on the internet. What fucking year is this? So she's looking it up on the internet. Paul watches Werewolf Guy nursing a drink from a brown paper bag. Paul scolds him. I thought we agreed no alcohol until the deed was done. Werewolf Guy shrugs. I just did the deed. So now he's back to, yeah.
Right, now he's all pissed off again.
Right. And then he's like, and there's also a pile of Coke on the table and Sky is dead.
He's got some, good points.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You know,
mean,
we're beyond, not drinking.
right. Fuck it at this point. So Paul is sticking to the rules, no alcohol and no weed. But Bill, the baseball guy, calmly lights a joint while he's saying this. Meanwhile, Lexi realizes it is vinegar. Paul deadpans. Great. We can pickle him to death. Then Lexi's phone rings. It's Alexander. Panic spikes because Alexander's there. They start scrambling to hide Sky's body, decide to wrap her up in the plastic. Werewolf Guy suggests chopping her up first and taking her teeth because, of course, he does. Like, let's do all this before this guy walks in. We gotta rip all her teeth out and chop her up? Like, what?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and, you have plenty of time to do that.
No problem. But Lexi says no, just roll her up in the plastic and hide her. So Paul points out the plastic was meant for Chris. Like, does this matter anymore? Lexi shrugs and starts shoving Chris further back in the chair. They wrap Sky up in plastic. They hoist her up. And these two guys can barely carry her. And the Wolfman guy, he's a pretty big guy.
He
And
is.
and he's like all bent over. He could barely pick her up. And she was tiny. She was a little woman. They're pretty weak. But they carry her over to this big chest style freezer. And, the kind that you just lift up the lid. And they shove her in there. They close it up. Lexi heads off to open the door for Alexander. And while she's gone, Bill finally gets up. He casually knocks over the boxes that Sky had been sitting on to cover up the puddle of blood that's now on the floor from Sky's head wound. Meanwhile, Werewolf Guy makes a big show of rechecking Chris's ropes, even though Chris is clearly not going anywhere. Lexi opens the door and in comes Alexander, immediately followed by another guy dressed in mobster streetwear. I'm sure you watched The Sopranos, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
He reminded me of like what Polly would wear.
Okay. Yeah, yep, that does make sense, yeah.
Yeah. So Alexander has plastic vampire teeth in and he jumps in with a dramatic, ah. And Lexi plays along. She's like, ooh, that's so funny. You look smashing. And then he rips the teeth out and throws them. You can tell this guy's pretty dramatic. He strolls into the warehouse with his entourage, which includes his dog. And he proudly introduces as Hellhammer, who is part dingo.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And the guy with him is his new best friend, Zyko. From the second he walks in, Alexander has the room. Paul, who seemed like the leader before, but now you can tell everyone's intimidated, including Paul. Alexander shoots him this look and asks, what are you supposed to be, Paul? Paul mutters, a 19th century vampire. So I guess he was not a
Yep.
colonial horseman. This is when I figured that out.
At this point, Paul becomes a Sigma Beta cuck.
Oh, yeah, totally. He went from leader of the pack to nobody in a second.
Yeah, you wouldn't like this guy.
Yeah. So Alexander, absolutely not. So Alexander just smirks and says, yeah, me too. Then he presses, where'd you get those fangs? Paul admits awkwardly again, from a goth store downtown. Then he flatly orders, take them off. Paul hesitates. He's like, are you serious? And Alexander just gives Zyko a nod. Zyko immediately pulls out a gun and aims it at Paul. And then you cut to Chris, whose face is like, what the actual fuck is happening? It's like, honestly, same dude.
Right.
So now Lexi and Werewolf Guy, who were standing right next to Paul, are instantly just casually move as far away from Paul as possible. They don't want to get anywhere near whatever's going on here. On their way, they pass Bill, who's still on the floor, completely unbothered. Like he doesn't give a shit at all about what's going on. He is totally into whatever game he's playing on his phone, or he's just above all of it. I don't know. But he's the only one who doesn't seem to care that Alexander's there. So Alexander starts the power trip immediately. He tells Paul to strip off the vampire costume. He's like, and he does it piece by piece. He's like, after he tells him to take out the teeth, Paul does. And he's like, now take off the vampire shirt. So he has a vest on, so he takes that off. Then he has the fluffy ruffled collar, which he can just rip off. And once he rips that off, it's really just a shirt at this point.
Right.
So, but Alexander's like, take off the vampire shirt. And he's like, okay. So he starts unbuttoning that. And then he undoes. I mean, it's such a long process too. He unbuttons the cuffs, takes that off. He's now in just a t-shirt and some khaki fucking pants. And Alexander's like, take off the vampire pants. They're just fucking regular pants at this point. He could work at Papa John's right now. So,
Right, exactly.
yeah. Alexander takes everything off, including the pants, and he's got these lashy thong underwear on. Then Alexander makes a little quip about how hairy he is. Alexander's just a bully, basically, and thinks
Yes.
he's the shit. So now we've got the dog again and Hellhammer, and he's gone over to where the chest freezer is, and he starts whining and sniffing at it and whining, like a dog would, like there's something going on in this freezer. So then Lexi fakes a sneeze and says, I'm allergic, and hustles out with the dog to take him outside. While she's gone, Zyko opens
That was
Chris's.
quick thinking,
Yeah,
by the way. That was quick thinking.
right.
We don't want them to see that there's a body in there.
Yeah. No one pay attention to this freezer. There's nothing going on here.
Right.
So while she's gone, Zyko opens Chris's wallet, pockets the cash, throws the ID to Alexander. He reads out Christopher Hawley, which is that guy's real name, by the way, in real life. Alexander reads, glancing at a business card, and says, "Oh, a dentist. I need a dentist." It's so casually, he's very casual, but kind of weird about it. Like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Nonchalant?
It's not, it's almost like he's teasing kind of in a way. Like he's
Oh,
teasing
yeah.
Chris because it's some dentist's card in Chris's wallet. So it's like he's kind of teasing him, sort of, and being just a dick. Lexi comes back in and Alexander asks, "So where's Sky?" Chris mumbles, he knows where she is.
Right. Yeah, he knows.
Lexi lies. She's a no-show. I think she went to Cicero's. Alexander calls her a dirty whore and then barks for pictures. Lexi slides up to Macon, the werewolf guy. Now we know his name. Licks his face and says, "You better not fuck it up," or something like that. He gets all brave and everything. Like she just gave him this bolt of brave energy. And he's like, "We're going to cut this guy in half and dump him in a vacant lot." Then immediately stumbles into nonsense. I mean, there's a lot of this movie where they do a lot of talk in this movie, and I could not get down
Yes.
a lot of what they said. It's like, it would be forever if I took down everything they said.
And the thing is this movie wasn't a very long movie.
No.
It was about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe tops.
Yeah, I was shocked. It was funny because the first time I watched it, it felt like when you go down a road or you travel somewhere you've never been, how long it feels like it takes. Then when you go back, it's super fast. So my
Yes.
first watch through, it felt a lot longer than an hour, 15 minutes. And it felt like it took a long time to get to certain points. But then the second watch, I was like, whoop, it felt so fast. He mumbles, then immediately stumbles into nonsense about multimedia installations and paper mache.
Right. Very random.
You could tell that he felt like whatever he was saying wasn't impressive enough for Alexander, which is true because Alexander isn't impressed. So Macon is flailing for new ideas. He's like, "We'll stick a pancake on his face and throw him in front of the G train." And,
Right. And they're
okay.
like, what the hell is that? What? It's like the pancake is going to conceal his identity?
Yeah, because he was like, nobody will
Right. I mean, I don't know what kind of world this is set in, but, if you could staple a pancake to someone's face and cover their identity, sign me up.
forever.
I mean, I'll wear a pancake every day. Rob a bank, take the pancake off. Nobody will know. I mean, hell, you could probably go into the bank, rob it, walk out, take the pancake off, and nobody will know.
Or you could do it either way. You could walk in like yourself and then leave and put the pancake on. No one would ever
That's
know.
right. That's right.
Lexi finally says she's been working on a video installation and plugs a cassette into her camcorder. She flips the little thing out so they can all watch it. She calls it Validation in Black and plays footage of herself in a bathtub with hot dogs being thrown at her. Then there's like weird cutaways of ducks and a smug explanation that she's already has this venue, which we find out from Paul is just some juice bar downtown. So it's gloriously awful. So
I mean, it's still a venue, one way or the other. It's still a venue.
right. So Alexander calms the room with his theatrical charm. He drapes an arm around Paul, telling him his photography is excelsior. Looks at him and goes, "Who is this?" And Zyko whispers, "It's my drug dealer." Alexander dismisses the gun as a prop and pats Paul on the shoulder and then strolls the room like a director auditioning actors. He talks to Bill in French for a second. Bill, who has been totally unconcerned this whole time, actually says, "I'm going to cut his dick off and set him on fire."
Right.
The-
Like the poor guy. I mean, he's done nothing to these people, and they're just all cut off his dick and set him on fire. It's like, what did the guy's dick do to you?
right. Then the music spikes and Chris's eyes go huge because nobody wants their dick cut off or set on fire, I guess, either. But the dick part was probably the worst. This is where the scene tips from this weird theater. It has a whole overly dramatic, these are like theater kids feeling to it. And then it gets a little more menacing. So then Alexander drops the real bait. He's like, since he's the source of the grant money, which is over $300,000, all this performance he suggests is supposed to be the thing that gets them funded. He goes in this whole speech and he says a lot of words and it's part
They use
it's
words in this movie, and there's a lot of them too.
a lot.
Like
He's
almost every scene has words in it.
it's crazy. Gosh, I was like, what's with all these words?
They even write them down on
yeah,
paper.
they do. And so his speech is pure art world nihilism. It's warehouses turning into condos, and there's a Starbucks and Trader Joe's moving in. There's Arter lofts that are going to be marketed to the very people who will be priced out of the area. And he's like, what we do tonight will change things forever.
Ooh.
Dripping with pretension. So everyone's eating it up, except you can tell there's equal parts hubris and desperation under it all. It's just ridiculous. This whole speech, every time this guy talks, it's ridiculous.
Right?
So then Alexander gets very art world poetic. He says, I want you to think of him not as your victim, but as your collaborator. When the coroner writes the cause of death, it will read art. And then we cue the slow clap. I'm like, oh, right. So he pushes the group towards something avant garde. They'll wait until the witching hour. And this is his plan. This is supposed to be avant garde. This is what he decides. They're going to wait until the witching hour. And then they're all going to stab Chris until he dies.
Wow.
Not exactly groundbreaking or out there. So
No.
for the four people in the room, they just like nod. But you can also kind of tell that they're like, what? Okay. Alexander insists that the act is the artwork itself. So there'll be no splatter of blood on canvases or anything like that. It's the murder is the performance. It's like, whatever,
Yes.
dude. So then Macon says he needs food before they do this. So they start arguing about dinner with an absurd montage of Alexander says, well, we need to get cake because you can't have a party without cake. And Macon says he wants pizza. And Alexander's like, no pizza. Then you've got somebody with Thai and sushi and everybody's like back and forth. Each
Yeah,
with a
everybody wants
suggestion.
something different. It's like
Yeah.
when you have kids, what do
Yeah.
you want for dinner? I want macaroni and cheese. I want ramen. Bitches, just pick something. Just one thing. Want macaroni and cheese. I don't want that. I want ramen.
So, but they're all standing in a circle looking at each other, and the camera's like in the middle, basically going around the circle, going back and forth as everybody's saying what they want. And it's going through all these things. And eventually, the funny part about it is it all gets back to where Alexander's like, let's just get pizza, which is where they started. And during all of this, Chris is quietly working his hands free from the rope ties. So eventually, Paul notices the empty chairs and yells, God damn it. Chaos flips into action. Everybody scrambles for weapons except Alexander, who just opens his flip phone, and Bill, who remains inexplicably chill on the floor, scrolling sideways on his phone. Bill is the least phased human being on earth. Nothing bothers him. Lexi panics for a second, then spots Chris. He's trying to hide behind cardboard boxes, and I'm assuming that's because he thinks his cardboard box night outfit will hide him behind these boxes. But of course, it does not work. So he bolts down a corridor. Macon grabs an electric chainsaw. So he has to plug it in. So he's limited to the length of the power cord, even though he does find an extension cord, but he's still limited to whatever the length of this extension cord is as to how far he can go and if he can attack anybody for that matter. So he's going down it's not really a corridor. It's just where the shelves are lined up and they're all going in between where the shelves are lined up. And the boxes on the shelves, as he's going through, he's taken this electric chainsaw and he's cutting through all these boxes. Chris rounds the corner, coming down this aisle towards him. But as soon as he gets close enough to him, of course, the electrical cord pulls out and it's useless. So
Right, and electric chainsaws are known for their durability and their
power.
strength of cutting through things. Yes, the power to
Yeah.
cut through things.
Which we see later on. Every time it gets used, it's ridiculous. So Zyko has grabbed an axe, and others are also grabbing any lethal looking props they can find. Bill finally sets his phone down and picks up a baseball bat, like, fine, whatever, I'll join in. The chase is sloppy, frantic, and kind of dumb, especially from this group. It's kind of what you're gonna expect. It's like the whole, chainsaw thing and everything. But Chris manages to shove past him, the werewolf Macon, and bolts into a room, slams the door, and you can hear Lexi yelling, "There he is, there he is." Well, actually, before he even gets to the door, they're all kind of near him. Paul, who is like coming towards him, and Lexi's standing there pointing at him as he goes to go into this room before he closes the door. And she's like, "There he is, there he is." Paul like takes just kind of big, weird steps, but doesn't like lunge or run towards him. And he's got a knife. It's like he wasn't really trying that hard. But Chris gets in this room, closes the door, and it locks it. He's in here, and it's basically a storage unit, a tiny utility closet, something like that. And it has all this stuff in there. It has a dryer vent, that long silver dryer vent thing.
Yep.
It has some fire extinguishers. There's junk everywhere. But he's looking around for anything he can use to get out of this room because he can't obviously stay in this room forever. Back outside the room, everybody's standing outside the door. Macon has a chainsaw and it's plugged in closer to him. Zyko has an axe, and the rest, they're all circling the door. Suddenly the door flies open. Chris, who has just grabbed a bunch of stuff, that silver
Just random
reed,
stuff.
yeah, that dryer vent thing, the fire extinguisher, I don't know, some other stuff. And he just heaves it out. He doesn't really throw it at anybody. He just kind of tosses it out on the floor.
And they all just look at it.
Yes, just look at it and he gets by them. It's like, what?
Well, I mean, in fairness, they were probably just all confused. Like, what the hell
Right.
did he just do? And that's like, what do we do now?
Right. So for about 2 glorious seconds, it looks like he's made it. Then, of course, they catch him. Like in no time, they catch him. So that's very short lived. They drag him back. This time, they chain him to the chair. So they have big chains with padlocks, and they're back to business. After they've tied him back up to the chair with the chains, everybody's off doing their own thing. So Macon's gone to get the pizza and the cake, and Bill is playing on his phone on the floor. Paul is fussing with his camera to try to figure out the right shot. And then we see Lexi. There's a wall with looks like a picture window, and she's up
Yeah.
against it. At first, all you see is her face, and she's like moving back and forth, and you kind of get the idea of what's going on, but you're not sure who
Right.
she's with. And then a little while, you can see that it's Alexander, and he's fucking her from behind, and she's all up against the window. So then Macon shows back up with the pizza and cake. As soon as he shows up and he's like, "Yeah, I'm here," Lexi runs up to him from back where she and Alexander were. She grabs the cake and takes it over to Chris because Alexander announces that the cake is for Chris. Lexi has a bunch of white makeup on her face because she's all done up, and she's got this white cake pan
Right,
makeup,
because
pancake makeup.
that's kind of like what the character was that she's
Right.
portraying. So she's got like all caked all over herself.
Yeah. And so his face is partially like around his mouth and stuff, and on his cheek, he's got that white makeup smeared on his face. So he goes up to Macon and he says, "Lexi's vagina screamed at me." And
Yeah. So fucking weird.
so then, and he says this to Macon, and Macon's like, "What?" And you can tell he's bummed out. Like he's like totally upset about this because he obviously likes Lexi. And Alexander walks off, and Zyko tells Alexander he's bored. Alexander whispers in his ear, "Go grab his nipples and I'll spike his guts." Ooh, what? Like what?
Right.
So random.
There's,
Like,
there's a lot of random weird things being said in this movie, and
yeah.
it's awkward, but
Uh-huh.
it also fits the characters that are saying it because
Yes.
they're weird and pretentious themselves.
Right. Yeah. It works. It's weird and quirky, but it does work with
Right.
who these people are. So Macon, who's now pissed about the whole Alexander fucking Lexi, walks over to where Lexi and Paul are, and it's right in front of Chris, and he just throws the pizza boxes on the floor.
And that's not how you treat good pizza.
No. Well, maybe it wasn't good pizza.
True, true.
So Paul quietly asks to borrow Lexi's phone, and she, of course, makes a comment about how, "Oh, you shouldn't be on your phone during a murder." And he's like, he's just like, "Give me the phone." So he sneaks off and he calls someone, and he's like, "Hey, can you come down here? These guys are idiots." He gives them the address. So now he's reaching out to somebody outside of this group to come in and help him with something. Meanwhile, Alexander kills the music and announces that Zyko has brought a treat. Everyone sits in a circle while Zyko pulls out a bag with a vial and a bunch of needles. Alexander declares they're going to play Extreme Truth or Dare. The vial, it has truth serum. So everyone's supposed to get injected with this truth serum. Some of them aren't interested. Like Lexi, she's like, "Oh, I'm afraid of needles. They hurt, whatever." And Zyko's like, "You can't even feel this needle." She's like, "Yes, I can." And as he's saying this, he's, I guess, putting it in her butt.
Yeah,
As
he's
she was just
injecting
sitting
her.
there. Yeah. And he's like, "Yeah, you can't feel this." And she's like, "Oh, you asshole." And then this stuff works fast.
Fast.
Like, and it makes you like dopey high, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how that stuff works.
Yeah. Macon had said, "Oh, I want to use the same needle that Lexi uses." And she's like, "Ew, that's gross." And
Right. Yeah, that's right.
but so Zyko goes ahead and refills that needle and tosses it to him. He's like, "Here, this one's for you." So he goes and he shoots it up in his arm. And Bill's like, "Yeah, I'm down for that." So he throws Bill William. I interchange it in this whole movie because sometimes they call him William,
Yeah.
sometimes they call him Bill, and I keep doing it too. So Bill takes it and he puts it between his fingers. I was like, "Ew." Ew. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where some injectable
oh yeah, yeah, in between the
drug
toes,
users,
under
yeah,
the nails, which,
yeah,
God, under the
reduces
nails.
the needle tracks and yeah,
Ugh.
yeah,
And then we see Alexander take his needle, and instead of injecting himself, he makes it, even though it seems real obvious, he injects it into the crust of the pizza, which
right.
Chris notices and his eyes get wide, but nobody else notices. But anyway, they all end up getting injected, and Zyko, he ends up taking a pill, and the girl and Lexi's like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, the same thing."
Yeah, they put it in pill form.
He makes everybody get injected, and they don't want to, and he could just give them pills. This is kind of how this movie is. It's not like a spoof in the way that, say, Scary Movie is a spoof, but they are
Yeah,
definitely making fun of things, and there are these kind of, and actually it's funny that I'm gonna 'cause this whole next section is nothing but puns, but they basically do kind of have this whole pun kind of thing going on. Like when Paul was telling Macon, we said no alcohol and no weed. And as soon as he says that, it scans over to Bill, who's lighting up a joint. I mean,
yeah.
they do this a lot throughout this movie. Yeah. Oh, Paul does hesitate and says he doesn't want to take it. And Alexander sneers and says, "Don't be such a dildo, Paul." And just so we know, they say dildo about 500 times in this movie. Almost everyone. They say dildo a lot.
Well, it's because they were on a budget. They couldn't use so many words.
Once the injections start kicking in, they all get loopy and start tossing around pun after pun after pun. Bill says Paul puts the bitch in barbiturate, barbiturate, and they all laugh and they all crackle up. They all start doing all these puns and they all think it's hilarious. And every time someone does a really funny pun, Alexander says, "You're my new best friend." And Chris, who's still tied to his chair and gagged, starts tapping his feet together and stomping on the floor, trying to get their attention. So they notice, of course. They were like, "You have something to say?" And he nods. And they're like, "Is it a pun?" And he nods again. So Alexander gets up and goes over, pulls the gag from his mouth. And at first, Chris backs off of what he's going to say. He's like, "Oh, forget it. I missed my moment." Alexander presses him and threatens him with a chainsaw. And he's like, "Okay, okay." And he said, "I had a crazy night." And they all looked at him. He's like, but night with a K, like, with the armor. And they all stare at him blankly. And then he says, "I don't think I should be punished." So then there's a beat of silence where they all crack up at that one. So now Alexander is like, "Ooh, you're my new best friend." And he wheels him over to the group. And then they give him the truth serum. So now they're all hanging out in this circle with the truth serum. Then comes, let's all be real honest. And
Right.
Macon kicks it off and he's like, "Who's the best artist here?" And they all shout out, "Me," of course.
Me.
Bill says, "I don't want to be here. I just want to be home watching a DVD with my mom and dad." Which
Right.
I thought was hilarious. This guy at this murder party who wants to be home with his mom and dad. And they're probably all in their, what, 30s? maybe late
Yeah.
20s. I don't
Late
know.
20s, early 30s.
Yeah. And I think he said something like, "Not here with this whore," or something like that. Lexi chimes in. She's like, "Okay, I'll be honest." And then she reaches into her shirt and she pulls out one of those silicone bra inserts. The group thinks it's fantastic. It's amazing, apparently. It's like some groundbreaking artistic performance. Macon says, "Oh, I love that you did that. And I love you." So it's like,
Bar is low.
yeah. So Paul suddenly claims that he can lie, even though he's on this truth serum. And to prove it, he says to Macon, "Ask me a question." So Macon says, "What's your favorite color?" And Paul says, "Purple." Then everyone just stares at him and he smirks. "See, my favorite color is blue." Bill says, "Well, purple has a lot of blue in it." Yeah, not wrong. Then Lexi says, "We all know what your favorite food is, so tell us." So then Paul randomly blurts out, "I'm bisexual."
Right.
And
Yep.
it's like, "What?" And again, just random. Like they get these weird random things. Now you could, I guess, maybe blame it on them being high if truth serum makes you high. I don't know.
Yeah, again, I don't know much about it. I've never had any experience with it one way or the other.
Right. Yeah. So then
No idea.
Zyko follows this, Paul saying, "I'm bisexual." Zyko follows it with, "I make sex with pillow." And he's
Yeah.
Russian, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he says it that way, "I make sex with pillow." So Macon digs in next, asking Lexi if she remembers watching the water towers get blown up a couple years ago with him, and that there was some other guy there with them, and she's like, "Yeah, maybe." He says, "We ate ice cream and this and that or whatever." So he pulls out this baggie, and it has a popsicle stick that she had eaten from 2 years prior. He's been saving it all this time. Everybody kinda looks around, nothing happens with it. You just find out that this is just pushing more that he's obviously in love with Lexi. And then Paul confesses that as a kid, he once wrote a letter to Santa asking not to be Jewish. Then then
The
then Bill asks the group what they say about him when he's not around. Paul bluntly tells him they're kicking him out of the collective. Lexi softens it by saying, "It's because you're so talented and we're insecure." And then she admits how she hates good art because it proves that there's no room left for her. Paul then presses Alexander about the grant money. And Paul asks, "Do you really have $300,000 in grant money?" And he smugly says, "No, it's more like 500,000. Yeah, whatever, dude.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all know that he, of course, has not taken this truth serum. Then Chris chimes in with his own truth. He says, "I dumped myself." And then he kind of stops. So everyone pushes back away from him because they think he's just done this. They're like,
Right.
"Ew." So then he leads into a story about where he got stuck in an elevator at his cousin's wedding and he shit his pants. When the doors finally opened, he then had to walk through a model airplane convention, then climb 6 flights of stairs, and he could feel it down into his shoes now. He was also a groomsman. So now the group starts peppering him with questions. "Are you gay?" "No." "What's your favorite record?" "The Big Chill soundtrack." "What's your job?" And then he admits that he works for the NYPD. So now they're all like, "Oh my God, are you a cop?" And it turns out, no, he's a traffic enforcement official, which is a civilian role he just hands out parking tickets. Chris quietly admits he didn't tell anyone he was coming to this party and no one would even miss him if he died. Then he just sort of slumps over and I guess he passes out. Lexi then is like, "Let's do coke." Then we cut to another montage. There's loud music. Everyone's partying. Lexi and Alexander are dancing all over the place. Macon is pounding back more alcohol. Bill is painting. He's got this little easel. He's sitting on the floor with a small little easel and he's suddenly got all this paint stuff and he's painting. And then because apparently this is a pattern, Alexander gets bored of Lexi. He shoots Paul a look and suddenly he's now hooking up with Paul in the exact same spot and in the exact same way he was with Lexi earlier. So the music finally calms down. Alexander, Paul, and Lexi admire Bill's painting. They all get behind him. Alexander calls it fabulous. Then he hears Hellhammer barking outside. He tells Bill to go check on the dog. So Bill gets up and he heads out. Meanwhile, Macon stumbles over to Chris, who's gagged again, and whispers, "Did you piss your pants?" Chris shakes his head no. Macon says, "I won't tell anyone." Then collapses to the floor and immediately starts snoring. He's out. Outside, we cut to Bill talking to the dog, calmly calling the dog a stupid, stupid dummy, and then says he kills fuzzy ones.
Yeah, and there's no need to treat the dog that way. The dog did nothing wrong to anybody. He's just chilling outside. I mean, he was
Right.
just doing what dogs do. They throw him outside, and Bill goes out and he's treating him like shit. Leave the damn dog alone.
And he was being a really good dog for being out there for so long by himself,
He
just tied up.
was.
Yeah. And he was tied up to just a short little leash. It wasn't like he had some long run he could, run around on.
Right,
But,
exactly.
but Bill's a little weird, the quiet ones. He's the quiet one. So, meanwhile, back inside, Alexander, Lexi, and Paul are standing over Bill's painting, totally trashing it in that smug art school way where they pretend they're intellectuals. Alexander calls it jejune. They all ooh and ah at the word like it's the first time they've ever heard it. They're like, "Ooh,
Right.
nice word." So then we see Bill from behind because he's walked in now as they're talking trash about his art, and you can see his fists clenching, and he can clearly hear them ripping it apart. Lexi casually sees him, and then she's like, "Oh, how's the dog?" Bill says it's fine. Then dryly says, "Should we get on with the murder?" Zyko, who's bored out of his skull, but just jumps up and says, "Yes, let's do that." Bill silently takes his painting down and tosses it behind him because now he knows it's trash. Lexi snorts another line of coke. Alexander pulls Zyko aside and says he needs crank before he can do this. Go get some. So Zyko heads out. Alexander mutters that he'll stall these guys until he gets back. He tells everyone in the room that it's almost the witching hour and announces that he is going to recite Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven in its entirety before the ritual murder. And then he actually starts doing it.
Up until this point, I was wondering why they were taking so long to, kill this guy. Then when there's like, oh, the witching hour, it's like, oh, okay, it's going to be some sort of like ritualistic killing or something.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
it's like you're taking way too damn long. I mean, this poor guy, you
Yeah.
kidnapped him. He doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Right.
And you just keep pushing and pushing. It's like, just kill the guy already. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to see Chris die because he seems
Yeah.
like a nice guy, but at the same time, like, stop stringing him along.
He did say that they were gonna do it during the witching hour back during that weird speech he gave talking about, how avant-garde their art was gonna be and blah, 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 blah. But it was filled with a whole bunch of other bullshit, so it would be easy to miss. I also thought the witching hour was 3 AM.
It is.
Okay, well, they're gonna do midnight, so what do they know? Losers. Alright, so, he does go through and actually starts reciting The Raven, but his performance gets interrupted by a knock at the door, and you hear a woman's voice call, "Hello, hello?" So Paul runs over, answers the door, brings a young woman in, and this is the person he called earlier for backup. The group starts kind of freaking out, but quietly freaking out. They're like, "What the fuck, Paul?" He shrugs. He's like, "I never do a photo shoot without an assistant. Ugh, please." So
I mean, come on, God.
So Lexi runs up and she's like, "What are you thinking, Paul?" And Paul's like, "You don't know want to know what I'm thinking." Then Macon, who has finally gotten up from where he passed out before when he was talking to Chris, walks between them and says, "I'm tired of listening to people bitch in a little room. I'm going outside to smoke." So he heads out. Paul tries to frame it as art, not just a stabbing. Someone hisses, "Don't say stab in front of him." Like he doesn't know it's coming. What? You already
Right.
told him you were gonna stab him. Alexander says, "This is a private party, Paul. She wasn't invited." Then we cut to Macon, who's outside with the dog. He has his mask pushed up. Then he's like, "I'm going to tell you something I've never told anybody." And then he pulls the mask back down and puts the cigarette in his mouth, which is now way back behind the mask because there's this whole snout for the werewolf that's sticking out. So he has to put the cigarette way back in his mouth. And he lights his lighter. And I'm thinking, dude, you're gonna set yourself on fire. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. He
Right.
sets himself on fire.
It was a very quick foreshadowing.
Yeah, right. And a quick flame of fire, like he went up fast.
Yes, he did.
Macon lights up, flames shoot inside his mask, and from inside, you can see from Chris, his eyes get wide because he can see the fire flare up. And he hears Macon scream. Chris is looking at the assistant, and she's, who's busy checking his lighting to make sure the lighting's right on his face or whatever. And she doesn't realize anything's going on, but Chris is trying to signal to her like, "Hey, hey, hey, something's happening." Meanwhile, Paul keeps justifying the assistant's presence. He's like, "She's not staying. I just need one portrait. She'll be gone out before midnight." Then Alexander cuts in. Looks like Paul doesn't want a grant. Paul snaps, "What grant? We've been submitting work to you for months. Do we have to do an application? I've never seen this so-called renowned work of yours." And he looks at Lexi. He's like, "Have you seen it?" And she's like, "No." So now you can get the feeling that Paul's starting to doubt Alexander even has this money. So then we cut back to Chris. He's gagged, of course, but making frantic ooh, ooh, ooh noises until the assistant finally pulls a gag out. And he's like, "Run, you've got to run now." And she just shrugs. And she's like, "Oh, this kind of thing happens at every set." Clearly, assuming that he's talking about this artist drama. They're all upset and yelling at each other. So then we go back to Paul and he's pressing harder. He's like, let's see your sketchbook, Alexander. Show us what's in it. And Alexander bristles. He's like, you're crossing a line. But Paul won't back down. Just then, Hellhammer starts barking outside like crazy. Alexander tells Lexi to go check it out. Then she comes running back in. She has the dog, and as she's walking through between Alexander and Paul, she's like, Macon's on fire. And then just keeps walking. Nobody listens to her that Macon's on fire. She just walks over to where Chris is and she ties the dog up to the chair that Chris is tied up to. So then you can still hear Paul asking Alexander, "Why don't you invite us to your house in the Hamptons? Why is your cell phone a Jersey area code? Why do we always pay for your dinner?" And then Alexander's like, "The Hamptons aren't your scene. New Jersey is where my business. I do a lot of business." And what about Coney Island? And Paul shoots back, "Those were hot dogs." They're arguing back and forth. And Lexi not in a rush. Like she's not moving super fast at all herself. But she goes over, she finds a fire extinguisher on the wall. She takes it down. She goes outside. She goes to use it. It doesn't work. So she goes back inside very nonchalantly, puts it down, goes over to the assistant, tells the assistant, "Come with me." And they go and they find two more extinguishers. They go back outside. They douse Mason. He's charred, but still alive. Inside, Paul's argument with Alexander reaches full boil. He's basically calling him a fraud. Meanwhile, Chris is quietly inching his chair toward the dog. He's like turning his chair in a way to twist around so he can get the dog off the leash and unhook it. So when he does that, the dog immediately goes over to the freezer and starts sniffing around and he's whining at it the same way he was before. But this time, it snags Alexander's attention. So Alexander strolls over, like, he's like, "Well, let's see what's going on over here." And then Chris is watching this happen and Chris is getting excited. Like he's like, "Oh, now finally some shit's going to happen because he's going to find out that Sky is dead." So I'm sure he's
Right.
thinking, why would they hide Sky from being dead from Alexander unless there's going to be some big trouble for it, right? So Chris is watching the group and he's like, "Yeah, this is going to be it. They're going to open the freezer and it's going to be all over." So Alexander flips the lid. Lexi and the assistant stagger in as they're dragging Macon back in, who is still smoking and half charred. Lexi breezes
And
past Pat.
and and
Go ahead.
presumed dead at that point
Yeah, I mean, you would
because
think
he
he'd be
wasn't
dead.
really moving.
Yeah, yeah. So Lexi, as she's breezing past Alexander with the body, she deadpans and says, "That was an accident." She's talking about Sky being dead in the freezer. As this is going on, Paul notices the leftover vial and needles are still on the floor from the truth serum. So he picks one of the vials up and puts the truth serum in it. Alexander spins around, closes the freezer, and says something like, "One down, three to go." Paul moves up to him and stabs him in the neck with the truth serum. Lexi yelps, "What the fuck are you doing?" Alexander gets immediately all doped up and looks totally high, like instantaneously. So then he's like, "I'm a fry cook." And then Paul sneers and says, "See, he's full of shit." And Lexi blurts, "Ugh, I let you fuck me."
Everybody's feeling dejected at this point.
She probably feels gross because she just let this nobody fry cook fucker. And
Right.
everybody's like, he's been all this pretentious asshole all this time, and we're obviously better than he is because 'cause we're artistes. So Paul rifles through Alexander's sketchbook while he's out of it. It's basically got like a whole bunch of words, and then he's got these cut and paste collages, like he cut pictures out of magazines or something. But Paul notices that he has jejune written in there. So he's like, "Are you seriously just writing down words that you can use on us later?" And he's like, "Yeah." So then there's another page that has grocery style notes for his grandmother. It says Centrum Silver, Metamucil, six pack Ensure, arthritis meds, and a reminder to watch CSI Miami. I paused that because I thought that was a little funny little page because just this guy's just a regular dude.
Right.
So Paul confronts him. He's like, "Where are my photographs?" And then Alexander says that they're at his grandmother's house in New Jersey. And then Lexi's like, "Well, what about my art? What are you going to do with it?" He's like, "Well, I was going to kill you and then sell it because art isn't worth anything until you're dead." So then the assistant zips up her bag and she's like, "I'm leaving." And Paul says, "Yeah, we're all leaving after I take one last picture." Then Lexi sneers at Alexander and says, "I hate you. Is that even your real name?" And he's like, "No, it's Tim."
Do you ever also notice with horror movies, it's always, "Oh, one last time, one
Right.
last room, one more minute."
Right.
It's like that just one more is usually what gets everybody killed.
Oh, yeah. Like if he had just been like, "Okay, let's pack up and go," he still might have gotten killed, but he would have been paying attention, I guess, and maybe it could have saved him from being killed because now he's so focused on looking at his camera that he doesn't notice what's going on around him. At that moment, Zyko bursts back in with his huge bag of crank and plops the bag on the freezer. Alexander, he's still in his little like zoned out thing, but he knows what's going on. But he looks at him, he's like, "Hey man, shoot Paul in the face." He does. He shoots him. Lexi did scream to make Paul aware, but Paul is not paying attention. He's just focused on getting this picture taken. So when Zyko shoots him and it goes clean through his head, but Paul is still upright and he turns and he's like, "Unbelievable." Like, "Motherfucker, you shot me. This is unbelievable." Like, he's still talking. Everything seems fine. Then
Right.
you have Alexander who says, "Shoot him. Shoot all of them." So then Zyko fires again, hitting the assistant. And then Paul's still bizarrely aware and yells, "Unbelievable. Will you just let me finish?" Before Zyko puts two more rounds into him. Paul
Right.
finally drops to his knees, but he's still aware and he's like, blood's dripping, like not even dripping, it's pouring from his head. And he's got his hands out like he's trying to catch it. But then he finally drops to his knees and falls down the ground and he's dead. Chris, who's still chained up, watches with wide eyes, and he's like, you can see it. He's like, "Don't shoot me, don't shoot me." He's shaking his head. Then during all this, the dog gets kind of up on the freezer and he's nosing around and he finds the big bag of crank and takes it down. So then on the ground, one last time before Paul does die, he does look at Zyko's shoes and says, "Look at your stupid shoes." So then
Famous last words.
yeah. Lexi snaps and hurls herself onto Zyko's back, and they wrestle, and they're all over the ground, and they're thrashing around. Then we go back to Alexander, who's still on top of the freezer, and he starts, fumbling around on the freezer looking for his bag of crank. He's like, "Where's my crank?" Meanwhile, we see Hellhammer, who is now torn into the crank and consumes some of it. So Macon, still alive, surprisingly, suddenly stirs. He sits up, he pulls off his mostly melted werewolf mask, which takes off the entire, all of his hair is gone. He's all bloody and charred.
It peels off some of his skin, and
Yeah.
part of the mask stays stuck to his face.
Yeah. The snout with the teeth and stuff are still stuck to his face. So he looks like, a half cooked half wolf. So,
Right.
but he is totally fixated on Lexi and he's fueled by anger that someone's attacking Lexi. So he staggers over to the electric chainsaw, even
Of
though there's
course.
plenty of other weapons he could use. He
Yes.
really loves that chainsaw.
Well, I mean, everybody has their thing.
Guess so. So he plugs it in and then he lumbers towards them. Then we go back to Bill, who's still sitting on the floor playing a game on his phone. He glances up briefly and then just goes right back to the screen, completely unfazed. Like all this
Yeah,
shit's going on.
he doesn't care.
Doesn't care. Macon revs the chainsaw and starts hacking into Zyko's leg. It's slow, probably because it's electric, doesn't have a whole lot of
Right.
power, but it takes him forever to saw into this leg. Zyko's howling. And it's funny because at this point, you can hear Bill's game say, "Everybody dies."
Yes.
Then finally, Zyko's grip on Lexi loosens enough for her to break free. She runs to the table, snatches her bag, grabs her phone and a set of keys, and shockingly considerate for this group. I was like, wow. She runs straight to Chris and unlocks his padlocks, which I was shocked that she would even think about him because these people are so self absorbed.
Yeah.
I was
It was
shocked.
kind of, yeah, it was it's definitely a twist that I wasn't expecting to see.
Right. Yeah. Because I would have thought they'd all try to run out of there and just leave him there and not even
Right.
think about him. So she's unlocking all the padlocks. She's got an end of the chain and she's running around him to get these because it's around him and around him and around him. So she's going around in circles around him to take this chain off of him. At one point, she's down in front of him and she's frantically trying to get the heavy chain around him. So for a second, it seems like there might be some hope because Zyko, who had the gun, he's down for the count. We don't think that Alexander's got a weapon and he probably doesn't have the balls to do anything. And if he did, you think that it's all good. But then you hear in the background someone say, "Everybody dies." And an axe comes down on the back of Lexi's head and she's killed in one single brutal hit.
Yes.
During all of this stuff that was going on, also, Alexander decides he's going to leave. So he walks to go leave. And the dog, who's now all hopped up on Crank, follows behind him. After Lexi gets hit with the axe, you see the dog come back in and you see Alexander crawling back in, and his whole mouth area has been chewed up or whatever. So the dog obviously attacked his face, but he's still alive. The room collapses into craziness because then we see Bill, who is just taking this axe and it looks like he's just barreling down on Alexander just over and over and over again. He's like, everybody dies, just constantly. It's all you hear is
Yeah,
everybody dies.
he's got some anger issues.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's the quiet ones you got to watch out for. So all this slaughter is going on. There's blood going everywhere, but Chris, she has freed him up enough that he can just yank the rest of these chains off over his head. And he slips away, hopefully thinking free at last. And he's, bolting out. And he's going back more into the warehouse. As Chris scrambles to the warehouse, he grabs his glasses. He found those somehow because they did take his glasses off earlier and threw him somewhere. And he grabbed those
Yep.
because he wears glasses. I don't even know if I brought that up. William is still full berserk mode with the axe and, die, die, die. He's, yelling all this stuff. Then they do a shot and you realize he's actually attacking the cake. So all this
Right.
time, we think he's been doing this to Alexander. He's actually been just taking the axe to this stupid cake.
It was probably gross.
Yeah. Well, it was a white cake. It was probably blah. So Chris is running out and he's following all the exit signs, only to find that once he gets to the exit, it's locked. So then he runs back and he's leaping up on all these things. I guess he's leaping on junk, like up on junk. And I guess he's looking for a way out, maybe in the ceiling. I don't know. But he finds a conveyor belt that runs to an upper floor. So he flips it on, climbs in, and starts going up the conveyor belt. He can still hear William down below losing his mind. But eventually, William is chasing him. He's following wherever Chris went. So Chris gets to the top floor where this conveyor belt stops, looks down, and he can see William down below getting ready to get in and get on the conveyor belt, which he does, and he starts moving up. So Chris flips the switch to send him back down, which he does go back down. And then
And it was kind of funny when that happened.
it was funny. And then Chris, because this whole movie is like almost like a calamity. Like,
Yeah, it's a horror. I don't think it presented itself as such, but it's kind of a horror comedy.
oh yeah, yeah, it's totally a horror comedy, absolutely. Yeah. After he has it go in reverse so that Bill goes back down, he takes off running. So then of course when he gets to the bottom, he just hits the up button and he gets on and goes back up, yelling this whole time that Chris is going to die. Now everybody is chasing everybody because we've got Bill chasing Chris, but we also have Macon who is back up and realizes that Bill killed Lexi. So he grabs the electric chainsaw. Naturally, he starts running after William, and he gets on the conveyor belt and goes up. And you can see the long electric cord behind him. I thought the electric cord was going to get stuck and something weird was going to happen, but it didn't. Chris gets outside on the rooftop. He feels like, okay, I don't know why he thought he had a moment because he knew that Bill was coming. I mean, he had to have known that Bill could have just turned the escalator back the other way to
Right.
come back up. But he's like, he takes a minute, whips it out, and starts peeing. And he seems very
Yeah.
relieved by this. Like, and he pees and pees and pees. He probably had, hours of piss in there that he'd been holding on to. I'm surprised he didn't pee his pants. I would have, as we all know. I'm very good at that. So he's peeing and he thinks he's momentarily, I guess he thinks he's safe. But then, of course, William strolls out. They lock eyes. Chris zips back up and bolts for higher roof via ladder, which I'm like, what the fuck? Why are we going up? Where are you going to go? Like, what the hell? Again, and now you're on a roof? Okay. William follows. Macon lumbers up to the roof, sees where everybody's going. He's following William, and the rooftop area is massive. I at one point thought they were actually on the street, which I didn't understand. I was like, how did you go up a ladder to the street? That doesn't make any sense because it was so vast. So they're just running across this rooftop and they're going from rooftop to rooftop. These buildings are obviously really close together. Chris is running and he goes down a rooftop onto a lower rooftop. He's got a good bit of distance between him and William, but it's weird because he's running. He's not running super fast, but William's not running at all. William is just walking with authority is basically all he's doing. Then of course Mason, who's all fucked up, is just kind of lumbering along. At one point, Chris goes down onto a lower roof. He finds a ledge and he hides down on this ledge. We see Bill walk across in the distance. Bill makes it almost all the way across. We're like, oh, he's going to go right by him and Chris is going to get away. But Chris's watch beeps because it's time to take a pill. And he's like, shit. So then Bill, of course, is like, you're going to die. Everybody
Yeah,
dies.
and of course, it's just at that moment that the alarm goes off.
Yeah, of course. Perfect timing. And it's an old ass, what looks like an 80s watch to me, but whatever. Maybe this guy is just really nostalgic for the 80s. I don't know. So he finally gets the watch to turn off, the beeping to turn off. And He jumps up almost as Bill is about to bring the axe down on him, but he manages to get away somehow. As he's running across these rooftops, he hears some rock music. He realizes there's a party on the next roof. So he leaps across, stumbles into the group of people who are drinking and dancing, and he starts screaming, "Murderer! He's a murderer! Call 911!" Then he falls down, spills somebody's drink or something. They call him an asshole, and nobody's taking him seriously because it is Halloween, so, this is probably the perfect time to kill somebody is on Halloween because no one's gonna believe it. Because if you're covered in blood, well, yeah, of course, it's Halloween.
Right, it's
If
Halloween.
you
It's
know
the best time to kill somebody.
absolutely, the best time. So then he runs inside and he's yelling, "I need a phone, call 911, call 911." And he goes down the stairwell, he pauses on the landing, looks at the next set of stairs, and he comes face to face with a guy who is dressed like a giant cell phone, which I thought is they do this is that thing the thing that they do in this movie. Like, it's almost like the whole movie's got these puns that are in
Right.
there 'cause he needs a cell phone and there's a guy that's dressed like a cell phone. So they're just very committed to being weird and quirky, I guess. William eventually crashes the same rooftop party. He scans the crowd, sees that he's not there. He goes inside, and Chris is already downstairs in the middle of a huge party, maybe kind of like a rave, but not as crazy, I guess. But there's lights, there's music, people are everywhere. Chris hides behind this paper wall and he ducks down and he takes a breather. Like you can tell he's like, whew, and he takes a break. Then we see William and he comes in, he's looking around. He can't see Chris, but he sees a bartender. So he goes over and he orders a pink panty dropper. While he's drinking it, he sees where Chris stands up because this paper wall has a light behind it and giving it this kind of glow. And there's painted spooky trees, but you can see the shadow of Chris walking behind this paper wall.
Mhm.
So William downs the rest of his drink and goes after Chris, and he just bursts through the paper wall. He starts swinging his axe, and Chris is able to slip away, and he sprints out of the area. He runs down a hallway. He stumbles next to a line of people who are waiting for an interactive human installation called the Bus People, which is supposed to start at 1 a.m. He's yelling at everybody, "Call 911, call 911." Nobody cares. Nobody's
Yeah.
listening. Nobody cares. He pushes past them. Then there's a staffer at the head of the line who's keeping people back until it's starting. And the staffer stops him. He's like, "Hey, are you part of the show?" And then the staffer gets on his headset to talk to somebody about this guy. And then Chris runs past him. So he ends up running past a couple other rooms. He opens a door and ends up in a room where there's like, I don't know, 5 or 6 naked people. And they're all painted up as art in some way. And then
Got
there's a
their body
sign.
painted.
Yeah. And then there's a sign on the wall that says art with a question mark. And then Chris says, "Sorry, I just need to hide. Anyone got a cell phone?" And then he crouches behind a stand with a pumpkin on it. He's
Right.
completely visible. I mean, he's not
I
hidden
mean,
at all.
you could see the hat.
Yeah, the hat is a huge giveaway. Like, even when he was trying to hide behind the boxes, the hat is a giveaway.
Right.
So, meanwhile, William breezes right through security and runs into Cicero. So Cicero, who was in one of the little room areas that Chris just went right by to get to the room that had these people in it. Cicero is there and he's got a headset on and this is his party, his place. He is obviously the big shot host there. He sees William and, his whole costume and the blood and everything. He's like, "William? Bill?" And he's like, "Oh, finally, an artiste."
Right.
So then he's, gushing at William, talking about, how great he is. And he mentions some guy that, I don't know, maybe was a professor and how that guy loved his murals back in the day. He's really just, they all kind of feed each other a whole bunch of shit. There's a whole lot of smoke blowing up asses in this group of people. He mentions, he's like, "Hey, do you know if Alexander's coming?" And this, of course, now you get this weird shot of Bill where because he broke out of the craziness while he was talking to Cicero. He was like, he seemed just like a normal young guy when he started talking to him. But then once he mentioned Alexander, he gets this screeching weird music and he has that face of, "Ooh, everybody's going to die." So,
Right.
but Cicero's like, "I've been talking to him about a grant." So
Yeah.
Alexander's talking to everybody about a grant. Although I don't know, this guy doesn't seem like he needs a grant. His place seems
Right.
pretty cool. So he's like, "Here, let me get you a drink." Then Bill says something about coming in at one point. Cicero was like, "They're already letting people in?" And he's like, "Oh, they're just a bunch of dildos." So again, he's like, everybody's saying dildo in this movie. Everybody. And I really can't express enough how many times they said dildo in this movie.
Again, they were on a tight budget. They could only
Yeah.
use so many words.
It does kind of remind me though, because back in the late 80s, early 90s-ish area, and I think it was in the 80s, because I remember people were constantly calling people dildo all the time.
Right.
And I was younger and I didn't know exactly what that meant. So I was a kid just running around saying dildo all the time. Like, you're such a dildo. And then somebody, maybe my mom, asked me why I keep saying that. And I was like, this is what everybody's saying. And she's like, do you know what that is? And I was like, yeah, it's like a bird or something.
Like a dodo, but a dildo.
Who was the dodo? I was the dodo. So, then my mom told me to stop saying it. So, I was like, "Okay." I was like, "What's wrong with this bird? Why can't I talk about this bird? I don't understand." Cicero walks off to go make a drink for William, and then William takes that opportunity to go and find Chris. He's back into the thing, and as he's walking away, he's like, "Fuck this whole scene. Everybody dies." He storms off, and he ends up going right to the room where Chris is hiding behind the sad little pumpkin display. He opens the door, he takes the axe, he smashes the pumpkin. Chris is like, "Ah!" Like, "Really? Did you think he
Right.
wasn't gonna see you?" Chris looked at all the other people in the room that were there for the art exhibit that were all painted up and naked. And he said, "We're going to all have to fight him or he'll kill us." The one guy that was right there in the front who was closest to William said, "I'm a lover, not a fighter." Then William takes the axe and just right into his shoulder. And then he just goes to town on everybody. I mean, it's complete massacre. He's just going absolutely crazy. He's losing his shit. He's screaming, everybody dies. Chris is over in the corner with his hands over his ears and he's screaming. He's like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you killing everybody? Why are you doing this?" And I'm thinking, why are you not moving? While he's going crazy, killing everybody, why aren't you leaving this room? But he just stood there and frozen and screaming. They're making all this noise. So there's all this noise coming. So Cicero, who's outside the door, he hears the screams and he thinks the show has started already. So he yells over his his headset, "Let people in. It's go time." Meanwhile, Macon, he finally makes his way to the rooftop party. Everybody assumes he's a charred wolf, but they're really like, wow, because if this were an actual costume, it would be incredibly impressive. He mutters, all he can do is say, "He killed Lexi."
Right.
But then he sees the lights that are hanging. It's like angels. He's like, "Ah," because he's like, "Lights, that means electricity. I can hook in my electric chainsaw."
Chainsaw.
He follows the electrical cord, follows it all the way around until he gets to the outlet. We go back to the room with Bill and Chris. Everything's done. He's killed everybody except for Chris. So Chris is like, "Why? Why are you killing everybody?" Then Bill said something. I can't remember exactly what it was. He probably just said everybody dies. I mean, that's
Right.
all he said this whole time, the rest of this
Right.
movie. So then you can see on Chris's face that he looks like he's about to accept his fate because he kind of closes his eyes, takes a breath, and starts walking towards William. But as that happens, we get the shot back upstairs where Macon plugs in the chainsaw. He's all excited. "Yes, I've got electricity." And he raises his arms up with the chainsaw, but he's right there at the edge of the roof. So he tumbles backwards and falls off the roof. It just so happens that he's falling directly in line with the window that's behind Chris in the big bloody massacre room. So when this happens, he immediately knows what this is. He knows that there's an electric chainsaw attached to the end of this electrical cord. So he turns around quickly, grabs it, turns back around to Bill, comes to lunge at him with the axe and totally misses. Chris barely even moved out of the way. The dude totally missed him. So when he turns around, Chris turns around, faces him, and puts the electric chainsaw right into his head, but it's like part in his face and on the top of his head. And
Right.
this goes on for quite some time because, again, this electric chainsaw has no oomph and it takes forever to cut into bone, apparently. So finally, after what seems like forever, he kills Bill. Before we get to the part where he kills Bill, where Bill finally dies, William is screaming and there's blood going everywhere. And Chris goes, "This is gross." But he
Yeah.
but he keeps doing it until the job's done. Finally, he slaps a pumpkin over William's mangled head and mutters, "You just ruined the party." That
Right.
is
That's the concern. It's not that you killed somebody, it's you ruined the party.
Although the funny thing is if he hadn't ruined the party, Chris would be dead.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what he's getting at.
Did you notice when Chris put the pumpkin on Bill's head that
Yes.
the his eye movement and the
Yes.
misplacement of the eye?
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, "Oh, I didn't see it the first time, but I did see it the second time."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, his eye moved." And he kind of flinched a little. Uh,
Yes.
and the pumpkin, when he picked that pumpkin up, it didn't look like it had a hole in the bottom of it either. And then
Right.
it fit right on his head. Like, no problem. So he then stumbles out of the room just as the audience that had been waiting in line starts to filter into the doorway. And those people are obviously, know it all artsy people. They're like all fancy and whatever. They see the carnage and they're like, "Oh, still life as performance art. Ooh." So then Chris goes past them. He grabs the doorman again. He takes his phone. He dials 911, hands it back, and says, "It's real." From there, he's basically in survival hangover. He gets in the elevator. You can tell he's dazed. He's drenched in blood. He goes down. He gets out of the building. He goes to the subway. I kind of thought this was a little funny part because it's just he's gone through all this shit, and he gets to the subway, and he's feeling around in his pockets, and he can't find his money or his subway card or whatever he's looking for. So he can't
Right.
ride the subway, which is such a silly kinda little thing, but it's just kind of, to add in there, but I just thought it was kinda funny that they added that just because,
Right.
the whole night it's not going his way. So now he has to obviously walk home. As he's walking, the sun's starting to come up, it's starting to be daylight. He's passing the harbor, and you can hear, horns and stuff going from boats. His watch beeps, so he now needs to take another pill. He pulls his pills out. I tried to stop it to where I could read what those pills were for because I wanted to know why he needs to take this many pills. Like, he has
Right.
to
Yeah,
wake up in wake up in the middle of the night and pick a pill? I mean,
yeah, it was hard to read.
yeah. So he just stares at them and then he tosses them. Maybe he doesn't eat them. I don't know. So now it's completely daylight and he's walking down the street. You see the remnants of the Halloween aftermath is everywhere. There's eggs and shaving cream, balloons, trash all over the place. He gets to his apartment on his stoop. The bowl is still there. It still does have a few sad candy corn pieces in there.
Probably
So,
about 10 altogether,
yeah.
maybe.
So he picks that up, he goes inside, he throws his keys down, opens the fridge, grabs the milk, takes a swig straight from the carton, picks up the bowl of candy corn, shuffles into the living room where he then puts on his slippers. Still a bloody fucking mess, though. I mean, just an absolute mess.
Well,
All of
he
his
had a
stuff's
hard
still on.
day. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
you
too
don't
much.
always wanna take a shower right away.
Yeah. Not when you're bloody and brains all over you. Of course not. You wanna sit down in your furniture with all that shit on.
Right, you wanna relax a little bit.
Yeah. So he trots over, looks at his chair. Sir Lancelot is still curled up in it. Chris politely asks the cat to move, and after a long stare down, the cat actually hops down. I guess he's like, "This guy's been through some shit. I better get
Yeah,
down." Chris politely thanks him, sits down, pulls off the cardboard knight helmet, and pops a candy corn into his mouth. He's still covered in blood, exhausted, but alive. And then he picks up his remote and he presses play on his VHS Scarewolf that he was going to watch before. And that's the end of Murder Party. What are your
and there
thoughts?
we are.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was surprised that I actually liked it, especially after reading the fact that it was done on pretty much no budget.
Right. Yeah.
And knowing that, I mean, it looked better than a lot of movies that do have a budget. It was one of those types of movies where it was awkward, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it was weird, because like, I don't know, like I almost didn't like it, but I liked it at the same time.
Right.
Like, I loved Chris's character. I thought his facial expressions were perfect when he was tied up and he couldn't, quote unquote, talk, even though,
Right.
like, it was loosely tied. But his expressions, like, it just put me away about how calm he was through everything.
Yes.
And I think that's what added to the humor of it for me,
Right.
because I think if this was done as a straight horror movie, I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah. Oh, no.
So I'm glad it had the comedic aspects to it. So it was more of a dark comedy than it was straight up horror, because then it made like all the silly little things that happened make sense. Like when the axe gets caught up in the light switch and when Sky falls over and hits
Yeah.
her head and then she's just like, "Oh, I smell grass." But yeah, I mean, I thought it was really well done considering everything that they went through to get it made. I mean, honestly, I would
Mhm.
probably give this 7 cents.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. When I first started watching it, in the first scene, I was like, "Oh my god, this is something that somebody just made from home. Like, this is gonna suck." It just had that feel to it at the beginning. Then as it went along, I was like, "Oh, okay, this is professionally done." So it felt professionally done. I mean, it really did.
Right.
I mean, I didn't know the whole thing about the budget, I till you told me. So
Yeah.
I'm super impressed.
I didn't know until I read about it.
Yeah, and, this movie also won some award at some film festival.
Oh, that's cool. I don't care what kind of film festival it was.
Right.
I mean, for her to win an award for considering
Yeah, yeah.
was pretty awesome.
But yeah, I thought I loved Chris's character too, and yeah, he was crazy calm, and it's funny because, well, of course, the second time when I went back and watched it, when you know certain things, because in the opening scenes, when they're showing the credits and they're showing all the Halloween stuff going on, all the kids running around, there's this one small bit where there's this woman who gets a parking ticket. When you first watch it, you don't really pay attention. I mean, you can see that she's mad and she's pissed off. She's like, "I'm not paying this." And she throws the ticket
Right.
at the cop there. And you don't pay attention to who the cop is, the parking ticket guy. But now, second time I watched it, I knew. I was like, "Oh, I bet that was Chris." And you
Right.
could see right then in that scene that he's a very, because she's yelling and screaming at him and throwing shit at him. He's just a very calm, meek, mild mannered guy. So
Yeah.
obviously that
And
plays through even when you're tied up and about to die.
and I'm wondering if the meds that he was on was like an anti-anxiety med.
Yeah, like that's true. It probably, maybe it was. Maybe now he's gonna go ahead and be anxious. Like,
Right.
I'm just gonna go ahead and be anxious. I'm good with that. I feel they all did really well. I'm gonna have to look up that one guy who played Paul because he looks so familiar. Or maybe you can do it while I'm talking. I don't know. But see if he's been anything else. But I thought they all did really well. I liked how they really played on how obnoxious the artsy people were and just all the dumb shit they were saying. But it also felt like, and I wonder how much of it was scripted and how much of it was just ad libbed. Because some of that stuff that they were talking about was just crazy. Just the stuff back and forth in some of those scenes where it was just the nonstop talking and it was just like, did somebody really write all this shit? Like, what the
Right.
fuck? I really liked it. I thought it was really good. It wasn't scary. It was not a horror in the same sense, it goes in that category of not really horror like some other movie we know.
Right.
Um, but there is a bunch of guts and gore and stuff that at least make it seem like it should be in the genre,
Right.
like more so than some other movie that shall not be named. But yeah, I would say and especially knowing that the constraints they had with the budget and all that, and that they all paid it just out of pocket, and they were all their own set people. Like, all right, that's cool. I would give it like at least a 7.5 cents. Totally. I thought it was very entertaining. It had the same kind of vibe to me in terms of just energy and fun that Villains had for me. That kind of
Yeah.
high energy feel to it. All right. So do you have anything to add?
We can put a sock on it.
All right, let's put a sock on it. And that's Murder Party, a night full of blood, pumpkin bread, and more uses of the word dildo than I ever thought possible outside of a sex shop clearance sale. So Dan, what do you have in store for us next week?
We will watch The Hunt.
The Haunt.
It is on AMC Plus.
All right, we'll be back to tear that one apart too. Until then, be scared, be prepared, and don't get caught in the dark.